He just asked what had changed, and I said we must have somebody come in and remote.
Yeah, I added to Google.
I didn't have to borrow it. I figured they needed that for them to make it.
Since I'm watching Joey play basketball,
I didn't see it the game.
he's awesome.
On Friday?
Yeah.
No, I wasn't there.
Those guys on the
I
first
took advantage of the nice weekend.
Me too.
Cabin the rest
Oh,
of
And I
the
was
week.
just like,
Where's
"Did you
Kevin?
see well, take it easy.
Oh,
I said,
Did some trail riding and stuff.
I said, they just grew a lot, our kids got better.
Remember
No,
something
I'm
about
proud of them.
They're
getting
crazy.
Yeah.
That's what I
Yeah.
think. I think that's
Tornado pretty much took out that town.
Yeah,
It wasn't too many years.
Nobody got hurt,
I
so
do remember that.
they're getting out there.
Yeah.
That's what I thought. It was kind of odd because it's a sideways.
geez, you dried off yet?
What's that?
You dried off?
Yeah, that parade, oh my gosh. That was intense.
Well, we just hit the last part of it.
Did you get caught in there?
Mhm.
Just hit the last part of it, that's all.
A little bit?
We got a little bit.
Pretty much, we got pretty close to the school before it's like.
Yeah,
I would've-
Yeah. we could have made it in, but I wanted to see more of the parade, so I suffered through it for a little bit.
Good memories is what it is.
Thank you. You were a track star.
I know, I put my phone on the float in front of us, and I thought, oh, I won't have to hold it. Well, they kept going, and I thought, oh crap, they're gonna go through the roundabout and take off, and my phone's at the very end of it. Yeah, we got it though.
Good thing Mom still got wheels.
Oh my gosh, yeah,
Pretty good.
I just thought,
Surprised that she got caught. Then you ran all the way back to get your car.
I know, I parked at the middle school, but it was a day, it was for sure a day.
Oh, we had enough for a form.
Yep. But I gotta stay.
Oh, no,
I should tell me what's.
No, he didn't. He sent, as a matter of fact, I said he sent me a text message and asked about what the meeting theme was. I said it was likely we had somebody phoning in. So we'll get started without him. We have a forum here. So we'll call the special school board meeting, independent school district 204 to order. We do have a quorum. Both Angie and Amy let us know that they were unable to attend tonight. So with that, we will stand for the pledge of allegiance.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Do we have a motion to approve the agenda as presented?
Motion to approve the agenda.
Okay, and a second. Thanks, Patrick. Any discussion, anything anybody would like to see changed on the agenda? Hearing none, all those in favor of approval of the agenda, say aye. Aye. Opposed, same sign, motion carries. We have one consent agenda item, the meeting minutes from the September 25th meeting. Do we have a motion to approve the consent agenda? Thank you, Brandon. And a second.
I'll second.
Thank you, Patrick. Any discussion on the consent agenda? Hearing none, all those in favor of approval of consent agenda, say aye.
Aye.
Same sign, motion carries. We're on the communications. Tonight we have special guests that's joining us via the Google Meet. Barb Doyne has joined us, and she will be doing an overview of the superintendent search process and proposal. So, Dr. Thompson, anything you'd like to say?
Yeah, we're happy that Barb's with us to present this information to us tonight, and they got the packet ahead of time. Thank you for getting that to us. I was able to send that out. Gave lots of homework last week, so you should be good to go.
All right, thank you, everyone. Can you hear me okay if I speak at this volume? Are we good?
You are.
Okay, terrific. Thank you so much. I appreciate the chance to be with you tonight. Again, my name is Barb with MSBA. I'm the Director of Leadership Development and Executive Search. And what I'd like to do tonight, if it's okay with all of you, is not go through the entire proposal word for word, because I know there's a lot in there. But if it's all right with everyone, I'd like to just point to a few things on a couple of key pages that I think are important for you to know. And then just take questions throughout the proposal presentation or afterwards, and make sure that you're comfortable with any and all decisions that you're going to be making. The one thing I'd ask though is the only person I can really hear, Dave, is you. I think the microphone on your computer is the one that's working.
Oh.
Okay, so I
No, it's
didn't hear anything the chair said earlier. So maybe you could be an interpreter for me, and if people have questions, just interrupt me and let me know what questions there are. Is that okay?
That's fine, thank you.
All right, great. And then my second question is, so I believe all of you would have this in front of you electronically or hard copy, right? Would you like me to just walk through it so you can see my face, or would you rather I screen share and then this would be the only thing that you're seeing? I can put it up on the screen as well. It doesn't matter to me, whatever you prefer on that screen.
Actually, your face shows up in a small box next to it when you present, so we can still see both.
Okay, so should I screen share it for anyone else in the room that might not
Yes.
have a copy?
Yes, please.
All right, we tried this and it worked right before the meeting. The one thing I will tell you though is I can't see you unless there's a trick Carlin knows, so I won't be able to see anyone like waving their hands at me, but if you say something, I'll hear you.
Okay,
I can only see what I'm screen sharing, okay?
sure.
All right, let's dive right in here. Proposal. Can everyone see this?
Yes.
Great, thank you very much. All right, I am going to leave it at about that size and just walk through a couple of things here for you. Obviously, the table of contents on this page will get you to some more detail on anything or everything that you might want to know about our search services. We have been doing this for about 15 years, and I've been with MSBA almost 5 years now. And the only work that I do is in superintendent search and superintendent evaluation. And we have a team that continues to grow each year to assist our members find their superintendents. So you'll find a lot of that information under the search team for staff and service providers. But the bulk of what I'm going to talk about first are on pages 1 through 18. Would it be helpful if I zoomed in on this, or is this size okay?
Try zooming in, otherwise
Okay.
I might be able to, oh yeah, that's okay, that's better.
Is that better?
Yeah.
All right, great. So I'm not going to dwell on this other than saying that the school board has two extremely important responsibilities relative to the superintendent. You hire them and you oversee them. They are the only employee that reports directly and only to the school board. So it is one of the duties that we feel the entire board needs to be involved in from beginning to end. So throughout the process, we will expect or hope every single board member is able to come to all of the meetings. This is not something you delegate to a committee. All right, the first planning meeting is where a lot of stuff gets done. You need to plan everything in advance, including getting the timeline ironed out, identifying exactly when the meetings will be held, what they're going to be held about, what time of day they're going to be held, so you can publish that timeline over the course of, it's usually about a 3.5 month time frame for most searches. Sometimes it's less, but you do have the luxury of time because you are starting early. You are one of the first ones out of the gate for this year's search season. So you'll probably have about a 3.5 to 4 month time frame, and you want to identify all of those dates and have board members bring their calendars so you all can make sure that you're not out of town that evening or on have vacation plans or something like that. You'll also develop the hiring criteria and the leadership profile. We will have a vacancy brochure ready for your consideration that night. We work in advance with the team in the district to gather all of the pertinent information about what makes Kasson-Mantorville so special. Get those points of pride in the brochure along with all of the demographic information about the district. You'll also talk through stakeholder involvement at that meeting and make some decisions that first night so people know what to expect, what's going to happen, and when it's going to happen. Now that second paragraph here talks about the hiring the right superintendent workshop. That's available to you as a part of the search process if you would like. It's at no additional charge. If, however, you prefer to hold the workshop separately, and I believe we're already scheduled for November 6th.
November 6th.
November 6th for a hiring the right workshop. Hiring our superintendent in-person workshop. We'd be there in person for that as well. You could certainly choose to work with another search firm or do the search yourself after that. That information is simply intended to give you a really good foundational understanding of each and every step of the search process. There are pitfalls and opportunities along the entire thing. So we want to make sure through that workshop that you as a board are informed and ready to make those decisions. Under the hiring criteria and leadership profile here, I mentioned briefly that that's one of the things you identify at that planning meeting. Every district is unique, and the sort of leader that you're looking for in Kasson-Mantorville might be different than what a neighboring district is looking for. So once you've identified those things and talked about a leadership profile, it says here that it will lead you through it will be used through the duration of the search as a guideline. So that hiring criteria and leadership profile will help you decide who should we interview? And we'll talk more about the vetting process. Do they fit that profile? B, what kind of interview questions should we ask? Because we want to get to the heart of whether these candidates understand the things that are important to Kasson-Mantorville. And C, it holds them accountable, I think, for further down the road. Whoever the successful candidate might be, they know what you're looking for. They said that they are that type of person. And so it gives them a good roadmap to understand what kind of leader is really going to fit your district. I'll pause for just a second. Are there any questions, Dave, so far?
Nope, no questions so far.
Alrighty, if I'm going too fast, just stop me.
Say,
I go on
Barb,
my website.
Barb, I did just had a profile from Winona, so they're just kind of perusing that as you were talking. So they're just looking at that, so. Good.
Okay,
No,
Are we
go
okay?
go ahead, yes.
alrighty, thank you. Stakeholder input is going to be a really important conversation for the board because you definitely need the voices of your stakeholders as a part of a superintendent search process. There are several ways for them to be involved. One of them, which always in our book should be conducted, is a survey of your stakeholders. You want it done online as well as in hard copy. You want to make sure that all of your populations are able to take the survey. Gather as much information from them as you can. Our survey is both qualitative and quantitative. We ask a lot of questions about what are the 6 most important characteristics, what are the 6 most important areas of expertise, what issues will rise to the top. But we also ask some open-ended or qualitative questions. And there is no limit to what people can say on this survey, no character limits. This survey is anonymous and it's available 24/7. One of the things that we learned during the pandemic is the response rate to the survey goes way up. If you leave it open for a week or two and it's available 24/7 and you communicate to get people to take that survey, that's become a very, very good tool for us to really understand what the stakeholders are looking for. We do ask that people self-identify how they are responding to the survey so we know if they are a community member, parent, staff, the students, things like that. And I know some people wear multiple hats, and we can talk through that as well. But I think the survey is a really critical tool to understanding what your stakeholders are seeking in the next superintendent. That second bullet point, the informational Q&A session right here, that was new 2 years ago for us. We found through the first couple of years I was here how toxic misinformation can be. So having these proprietary Q&A sessions with MSBA really helps dispel any rumors or innuendos about the search process. We host this. It's an online session. We invite questions to be submitted in advance in case people can't come to the session themselves. And then we host it and we record it. So we will lay out very clearly the timeline that's been approved by the board, the vacancy brochure that you have also approved, the stakeholder survey, what it is, how to take it, the questions that will be asked. And we record that session so we can then send the link to the district afterwards. So it's available on your website, the entire length of the search. So if anyone has a question on the search, they can go and watch it on the website. We also take live questions during that search and answer anything that stakeholders need to know about this search. So it's factual information and it's accessible to all stakeholders for the whole search timeline. And that, I believe, has helped cut back on people saying, well, did you hear they're doing this or did you hear they're doing that? This really is factual and it's coming directly from a consultant, MSBA, who's been hired to help the district. I also provide my cell phone number to everybody during the Q&A so that if they have questions, they are welcome to call me directly as well. The third stakeholder input that you could consider are called input forums. Another word for those are interview committees. Some districts like to have particular groups of stakeholders involved in the interview. That's a decision that we want the board to wait and make after you have the results of that survey turned into you. We will summarize and highlight all of the trends and the answers that are coming from that survey. Some boards feel like that survey is so broad and so representative of all the voices of the community that they don't feel interview committees are necessary. Other boards want interview committees to participate in some way, shape, or form in the interviews. And that's a decision that you'll make further down the road, but it's definitely an option for you to consider. And then we have another option here, which we have made a la carte. And the reason we've done that, these are the focus groups early on in the search. It's a very traditional methodology. And typically, while the survey is open, there may be focus groups being held or listening sessions being held with the community or with special interest groups in the communities. We stopped doing that as a typical part of our search because one, we didn't think it was necessary, and two, the return on investment wasn't as high. So we're trying to save our members money by not including it. If you want them included, without question, we'll do it. You can see the a la carte fee here down below. This is something that you need to think through real carefully if you're planning meeting. There are some excellent reasons to do focus groups. Some districts early on, it's the right thing to do. Other districts have found that some people are heard twice because they fill out the survey and they're able to come to a listening session, or they come to a focus group. And so their opinions are counted twice per se, and sometimes the people that come to those sessions are the ones that typically do have the time and the availability and the resources to come and tell the school board what they think. Now, these focus groups aren't with the school board. I don't want to give you that idea. They are with MSBA. However, there's a lot of barriers. Some people can't come to those in-person groups because they might do shift work, or they have no childcare, or they don't have transportation. There are always things that might get in the way of people being able to participate. So for whatever reasons, most of our districts these days rely on the survey because it's more equitable. Everyone's voice is heard at the same volume, and everyone has heard once. And so that's a tool that has turned out to be, for us, a learning opportunity. The continuous improvement that was provided to us by the pandemic was actually quite impressive. We used to always do focus groups and listening sessions and that survey. I don't think we've done both of them for a very long time, but they are certainly available to the board if you want them. And only you really know what's right for Kasson-Mantorville. So we can talk some more about that at the planning meeting. You would never need to make a decision like that in advance of anything. This is just a choice for you to consider. I kind of went on a long time about that, sorry, but it's something that we learned during the pandemic that I think has been really helpful for searches. Your search will be national because we are a member of the National Affiliation of Superintendent Searches. We have a nationwide database that we share with school board associations across the country that do superintendent search. And your search would be in there as well as on our website, on MASA's website, and on EdPost's website, where you can see those 3 bullet points. If you'd like some additional advertising nationally, you could consider any of these other sites. It's not very often that that is necessary, but there may be a particular reason you want to pay for some additional advertising. We do that at cost. It's later in the proposal. I'm sure you saw that. For the most part, though, most searches in Minnesota don't find this necessary. Very large districts might want this done, but it's an additional cost that only you know if it's something worthwhile to Kasson-Mantorville. I'm going to pause for just a second. Dave, how are we doing on questions?
Doing good. I just want to say that the stakeholder survey is in other languages too, correct?
Yes, correct. Thank you for asking. Thank you for asking. Whatever languages you might need them in. We do have them already available in English, in Spanish, and Somali. If there are other languages that you want us to utilize, we can certainly do that. We may need some help from some internal cultural liaisons or other folks. Google Translate has not always been the best of friends to us, so we want to make sure it's accurate. So if there are other languages beyond those 3, we can use some help from within the district. All right, interview preparation. I won't dwell on this one. I just want to say that it's really important to understand the do's and don'ts of interviewing for a public sector position such as superintendent. You are bound by data privacy laws. You are bound by protected categories and what you can and cannot ask. You're doing all of this in an open meeting. Every single step of the search process must be done in an open session. So you are deliberating on the finalists who to bring forth for an interview. You're also interviewing them in public, and you are also deliberating as to who to bring back for the second round and who ultimately to hire. So you're doing that in an open session. And so you do need to be very cautious about how that's done so that you don't take a misstep that might be costly for the district. And our interviewing training methods are, we think, really good. I think training at MSBA across all of the things we offer is excellent. And that also goes to the heart of what we do for superintendent searches. So you would be comfortable with what happens during the interviews, and you would be trained by us to make sure that you know what you're doing, and we'd be there. We would not be there for your interviews, because sometimes things do pop up. All right, screening fees. Right where it says important on that second paragraph right here, this is something that you will not find other search firms in Minnesota to do. We believe that you as board members should see all of the application materials for the pool. Everyone who's interested in this position, once they hit submit, that deadline then eventually passes for applications, and we share all of that with the board members. That being said, there's a lot of private data in that information. So we want to make sure that you as board members understand the obligation you have to not share any information that you're looking at with anyone. And also be very careful where you review those applications. For example, you wouldn't want to review them on your computer in a coffee shop. Someone could walk behind you, see a name on a resume, and immediately know who's applied for this. People's names when they apply are private data, and the only time they're made public is if you select them to be interviewed. Statute defines them as a finalist as someone who's going to be interviewed by the school board. So you'll be discussing the candidates A, B, C, and D in an open meeting. You'll know who A, B, C, and D are, and so will we. No one else will know. And once you decide that you're going to interview candidates B, D, F, and L, that motion passes. After that point, then the names can be read aloud of the people you're interviewing, but every other name of every applicant remains private data forever. And you don't want to be violating that law by sharing any information. So we'll entrust you with those because you're the hiring authority. We will, however, at the same time as you're reviewing them individually, you'll have a password to a secure spot in the cloud. While you're doing that individually, we are doing this, our applicant vetting process. We utilize service providers to help us with this. It is former superintendents, former board members that look through the applications and they compare and contrast the apps to what you've identified in your hiring criteria. We then usually come up with 6 to 10 people that we think are worth investigating further, and then we do additional vetting. We do pre-interview with each of those candidates. We talk to their references. We do social media sweeps. We will come to the meeting where you're discussing finalists with a recommended list. It might be 3 or 4 people. It might be 6 or 7 people. But when we say that we're recommending candidates D, E, and L, you'll know who those folks are because you've already seen these things. You then have these 3 choices. To accept the slate we recommended as is. You may have seen some applications that you were intrigued by, but we didn't recommend them. You could ask us, well, why did you recommend candidate A? I really liked candidate A. We will, to the best of our ability, tell you why, but we are also bound by data privacy laws. So we can't say specifically, but we will talk about how our process hopefully will bring forth the strongest candidates, but you're not bound by that. You could certainly choose to interview some other people or even none of ours, which is the last bullet here. I would say 95% of the time our recommendations are the same as what the school board members saw on their end. Sometimes though there's a candidate that they might know or know of, and they might want to interview them, and that's your prerogative because this is your search. We won't ever tell you what to do. I hope I'm not going too fast, but stop me if I am, okay? Here, we don't negotiate the contract for you. We feel that part of being a school board is to negotiate and work with your superintendent-elect to come up with an agreed-upon contract. That being said, though, we have the model contract that MSBA has developed in partnership with MASA. And we have a model contract. We share that with you and say, here's what we would recommend. Then all you really need to do is to plug in dollar amounts, compensation, benefits, things like that. Sometimes districts utilize either their legal counsel to assist or maybe an HR person. But we will give you that contract to make sure that you know it's been vetted and agreed to by all of the parties at MSBA and MASA. With the transition and follow-up services, I'd say this second one is one that is really important, that transition workshop. It's something that we will come back at no charge and meet with you as a new board team, the superintendent and the school board. We want to do it sometime in the early fall. So we're doing them right now for last year's searches, for example. We want to talk through what does the board expect? What are your priorities? What should they focus on? Because that first year can be a little overwhelming. If they are a seasoned superintendent, they still need to get to know your district. If they've never been a superintendent before, they're learning on the job and need to get to know your district. So we don't want to overwhelm them with tasks and goals that very first year. So we will help you set up an evaluation process so that everyone knows what's expected and everyone agrees upon how the performance of that new superintendent will be evaluated. And those are extremely helpful, and I want to encourage everybody to do those. But that's an option. There's no charge for it. We just really want our search clients to go through that workshop. We think it's important. This very long page of bullet points basically summarizes everything that I just said. So I won't go through it, but it does tell you what we'll do. You'll notice that we have some asterisks behind these. We'll be in the district for the planning meeting and the interviews, without question. We like to be there in person, but our hybrid model, we started doing after the pandemic. We were all online during it. Afterwards, we started doing 2 meetings virtually. And we were able to do that and save our members some money by not driving to all of these meetings. So there are 2 meetings. This one here, the interview training, and this one, the presenting candidate recommendations, that we do virtually. If you want us there in person, occasionally there are boards that say we'd rather you be here in person. There's just a simple $300 fee per meeting for in person. Otherwise, the hybrid model, we have found to work very, very well for our search services. Okay, I'm gonna keep going unless someone interrupts me with a question. You'll see our fee for the search is $13.9. There's no hidden fees. There's nothing beyond that unless you want to do some a la carte things, which are right here. The national advertising here, these are the app costs for you. We don't mark those up at all. And background checks, those are optional as well. Anyone who is an employee of the school district goes through a standard background check. That's just what's done. And most clients do that. That's what they would like to do. If, however, it's someone that maybe is not a known commodity in Minnesota, or they're not from a region, Southeast Minnesota where you might know them, some districts would prefer that we also do a much more in-depth background check. So we have a background check for $395 that you could choose to do on your 2 or 3 finalists, or more often people are doing them on the lone finalist. And that involves checking all of their educational credentials. If they say they have a PhD, we make sure they have a PhD. Also their work credentials. Do they really work where they said they worked when they said they worked there? And then it also has a nationwide criminal background check and things like that. So that's an option. You certainly don't have to decide until the end of the search if you would or would not like that done. And then the only other a la carte fee was those upfront focus groups that would run concurrently with that survey. Again, no decisions have to be made on that. Otherwise, those are our costs, and our costs stay right there. We do have a guarantee. If for any reason during that first year, you part ways with the superintendent, we will do another search for free at no cost to you at all. We do, however, require that you participate in the performance evaluation workshop, the transition workshop, as a condition of that guarantee. It's just so important to communicate right up front about what each of you is looking from the other, that we've decided that that's an important part of getting off on the right foot And so it makes us more comfortable with the guarantee that we know you're talking about some of those expectations. This is the workshop, which we are currently scheduled for November 6th in district with you, so I will see you that night. I'm not going to talk about that. And then a couple of things that I think really make us different. One is we really know school boards. That is all we do. And so we approach the entire search from the lens of the school board, and that's who we work for, not for the candidates. So we will ensure that you understand the impact of the open meeting law, the impact of possible data requests on board notes and every part of the search, the impact of data privacy laws, so that you will be prepared to run this search. We don't lead it for you. And it's kind of a strange thing. Sometimes people say, well, we haven't done a search before, so can you just run it? Well, you're gonna run it because you're the school board. We, however, will be there guiding, answering questions, informing, making sure that you're comfortable with those decisions. So you really do take ownership of this. And when you're done, you feel really good about it. We've had a number of boards tell us when they're done that this has been basically 3 or 4 months of a team building exercise, because you're working together toward a common goal. You're being forced into some tough conversations about what you want, about who you want. And then we are there to make sure that all of those conversations are held appropriately and professionally. And when you're done, you'll feel pretty good because you did it. We didn't do it for you. The transparency, I want to point to that Q&A with MSBA. We are the only ones that do that, and I think it is critical to make sure that accurate information is disseminated to your public about the search. And then the fact that we will give you all of the applications. No hidden fees, talked about that. Post-hiring support, talked about that with that workshop. So I'm going to jump ahead to the timeline. Right here is what we have suggested. I think this aligns with what Dave has also suggested to you. He and I spoke earlier last week, and it sounds very, very similar as far as when the activities should occur. If this were something that started in mid-November with a planning meeting, we would actually need a couple of weeks ahead of that to gather information from the district, to prepare the vacancy brochure and that sort of thing. So we would like to be hit the ground running by the end of October at the latest, to make sure that we have the material ready for you by mid-November. You would, in this case then, have a hopefully agreed upon contract with your new superintendent by late February, and at the latest, very, very early March. So that is the timeline we propose. And from this point forward, you can see references, searches, and resumes of the search team. And I'm not going to take you through all of that. So I can leave the timeline up and take any questions, or I can stop screen sharing. You tell me what you'd like me to do. But that's all I have to say.
Anybody have any questions here for Barb?
I do, Barb, at this point, what are the numbers of candidates, schools in outstate Minnesota, roughly our size, are seeing right now? And I know that can fluctuate, but in general, what are you seeing right now?
That's a great question. What is the candidate pool size in upstate Minnesota? I would say that they are down from what they were 4 or 5 years ago. 4 or 5 years ago, when I started doing this, it seemed as though no matter where the job was, we were seeing 25 to 30 applications. Now, and the pandemic had a big effect on this, now we are seeing pools as small as 3 and as large as 25. I would say, though, that last year for outstate Minnesota, our average candidate pool was probably about 12, maybe 16 at the most. The ones that only had 3 or 4 people were in regions of the state that are just tougher to relocate to for whatever reason. I'll tell you, southeast Minnesota is a very desirable part of the state. And we've done a lot of searches in southeast Minnesota, and those pools generally were between 10 and 16. So I'm comfortable with a 10 to 16 person pool. It might even be more. I think the more that things have normalized, the more willing people are to throw their hat in the ring. There are also a couple of things that will determine the size of your pool, and this is just an observation. I would say location is huge, and I just addressed that. Salary is somewhat important. and reputation of the district is very important. There are only 331 districts in Minnesota, but there are phenomenal administrators in education in Minnesota. Most searches in Minnesota hire people from within Minnesota. Now, they might come from out of the state. Usually they're coming back to Minnesota for some reason, though. It's not very often that someone in Florida or Texas or Michigan runs across our application and just like that decides they want to move to Minnesota and be a superintendent. So location and reputation are really, really important. The only other thing that can affect the size of the pool besides those three things is having an internal candidate, and often it is an interim superintendent. So one of the things I think was very wise that you did is your contract with Dr. Thompson is for 1 year. It's through June 30th, 2024. He is not interested in the more permanent position or a 3-year contract. I'm assuming this, but I think that's the case, Dave. So when you have an interim who also wants the job, the size of the pool will shrink because people talk. And they might say, oh, did you hear the interim's interested? Yeah, they've got a good shot at it. Or I hear they're doing a great job. Yeah, I'm not gonna risk my name going public if the interim is interested. Now, the interim doesn't always get the job, even if they are interested. That can make it a little sticky, but that can sometimes dampen the enthusiasm of applicants because their names will go public as soon as you choose to interview them. And so it's a risk for them in their current district to be known as interviewing for the position in Kasson-Mantorville. But generally speaking, long answer to your question is probably 10 to 16. And I want to say one more thing about the quality of the pool. It is smaller right now than 4 or 5 years ago, but the quality is higher. Because when I used to see 30 applications per position, I could probably take 15 of them right away and just throw them in the no pile. They weren't ready. They weren't qualified, they didn't have a license, they were just kicking the tire to see if they might get an interview. They're kind of practice applying to see how it went. That's not happening anymore. The people who apply for these jobs, whether it's 3 people or 25, they want to be a superintendent, they know what it's like, they're prepared for the job. I'd say last year, 50 to 60% of them had never been superintendents before and were still hired and are doing a great job so far. So you're not necessarily going to get a sitting superintendent. You might, but emerging leaders are the majority of new superintendents right now as well, which is interesting. It didn't used to be that way. Hope I answered your question.
Thank you. Yes.
Okay.
Anything else for Barb? Okay, Dr. Thompson, anything else?
Oh, I was just gonna say, thank you, Barb, appreciate it, and, at least by October 26th, we'll have an approval for it, so, you can kind of count on, but we're counting on in November, the date that I've hired, doing the hiring right superintendent workshop for then, and we'll have to talk about the other date for the planning sessions.
All right, well, thank you so much, everybody. It was nice to see you. My number is in that proposal. If you do think of other things that you'd like to ask, and you can reach out at any time. As I'm available to clarify. I hope anything else you might have questions on, but I'll let you proceed with your meeting. And I want to thank Carlin very much for getting you the meeting link and making sure that everything ran well on your end as well. So take care.
All right, thanks, Barb.
Thank you.
Thank you.
All right, bye-bye.
Very good. Anything else, Dr. Thompson, board on that?
If you have questions, sometimes you say, oh, should I ask that question? You can call Barb or talk to me, I might have some answers for you too. So I've been doing this for 6 years, so I kind of have a feel of those kind of things. And I think we're in good shape because we're early compared to most people. Plus, let's say like next week when I go to MASA conference in Duluth, I will tell people, be ready. It's gonna come out, I'm gonna tell them when it's coming out. It'll be coming out, in December. So people have over December to maybe do some applications, do some things, and those kind of things. So that will be an advertising thing for you there at MASA.
Thank you.
And then, of course, MSBA, January is another key time for you as a board as well, because then you're there as well, you can spread the news, but people know that, I know that people know that this is gonna be open, they know I'm here for 10.5 months and that's it. So they know that, so I think, up front, they know that, so that'll be good, so. I think we're in good shape as far as our timeline, and those kind of things. But it will be a rush time in November, a lot of information that Carolyn's gonna have to get out and that we're gonna have to talk about. And that, we need to have that planning meeting, because that, the planning meeting is pretty much this. You guys have to get all this information put together, and, the key thing here is getting the stakeholder survey and your survey and kind of comparing them and getting here what you think the 7 or 8 most important characteristics of the new superintendent will be, what you're looking for. Because you're gonna have to make questions. You're gonna have to have 2 different sets of questions, one for the first round of interviews and one for the second round. And many of those questions will come from what you think are the most important characteristics that you're looking for in the superintendent. So I believe, like Barb said, it is a board bonding, building process. And we talked about that last meeting, how important it is that we're working together as a good team, because you're gonna need to have that in the future, because you'll be working together a lot with these things. That's it.
Very good. Only other thought is, so we will have to take action in our October 23rd board meeting to hire search firm. So we'll pick that as an action item. We can't do that tonight. We don't have it listed as an action item, so that'll be next time we can do that.
But I will, if you have some objections or something, let me know. We've had a couple people already contact us about the possibility of moving forward. The sooner that we can let Barb know, obviously, the better it is. The easier it is to be for you to get things going, but we have to have the date for that meeting. That night, the 23rd, we're gonna have to date.
Anything else there before we move on? Okay, so Carlin, can we swap the
Yes.
4.2 and 4.3? So what we're gonna do is we're gonna have Patrick Gordon join us from Zed, and we're gonna hop to 4.3. Patrick's here. If you wanna join us up here, Patrick, that'd be great. And then we'll get back to Principal Larson's 4.2. Thank you.
Hello, everyone.
Thanks for joining us. Appreciate it.
Just have Byron. You guys have a nice. Yeah, so I was asked to come on in to review our ZED Joint Powers Agreement. I don't know if they have I brought hard copies, or you
I
reviewed
didn't
it?
print any off, but they all got the electronic, so.
So just kind of a summary. ZED is an ed district, and part of the lifeblood of that is we have a joint powers agreement. Really, if you've read through that, a legalistic document, it's really fun to read, but it really is the lifeblood of an ed district. It talks about how districts join us, how districts withdraw. God forbid if we ever dissolve, what that process looks like, how we're financed. For example, let's say we could not do anything fiscally, we can't go to a bank, we can't do any of those things. We have to go to our member districts. It talks really about the unique nature of an ed district and how that looks. We spent about, with the superintendent council meeting, about 6 months, to be honest with you, going back and forth, hammering home the language. A lot of it had majority, we turned it to unanimous. I can tell you, with our new facility, and thank you, KM, for really supporting that. We have seen our numbers grow. We've actually had whispers of other districts kind of talking about joining, those types of things. And what that joint powers really does, it spells out the long process that unanimously all districts, school boards, governing board have to be part of if we ever were to consider that. So really, that was the big thing. There's an attachment called proportionate share. We have Baker Tilly as part of our meetings, because we really talked about with the new building, that's a huge asset now within ZED, whereas prior to that, we would lease and we didn't really have major assets. And so That's a 20-year loan, and so there was a lot of conversation. Let's say down the line, a new district joins us. What do they pay as opposed to the original 6 and those kinds of pieces. There was a big push, which we will do. Once we get closer to the building being paid off, we'll revisit the whole joint powers agreement again, discussion. It is a general document because more specifics will go into our bylaws. As you know, the joint powers agreement, all 6 member boards have to approve it and the governing board. So that's a lot of, it's like taking a semi truck and trying to turn it around. So we really don't want to be constantly, we can, but changing that joint powers agreement takes a lot. It's a lot of people involved. And so the previous one had not been updated in my 6 years. And it was just time because of our new building, new situations, new everything. So I can tell you, all the superintendents really vetted this out. We brought it back to our governing board. And then really, frankly, it just got to the point, hey, let's set a soft deadline. There is no deadline, but we just want to kind of move it along. 4 of the districts have already approved it. And so we're Byron and Kasson, and we're going from there. And certainly if there's objections, we can bring it back and then come back to the governing board and then we talk through that. And if there's any changes and those types of things. I certainly can read it verbatim if you want me to.
Thank you. So did they actually take action to approve it? I mean, we don't have it as an action item.
Right, so I think the thought was your next meeting, we were hoping at the soups, when we were talking about this last spring, we were thinking that October, early November-ish to try to get all the districts. You know, everyone has different meeting schedules and the ways they go about everything. So, no, I wasn't expecting any approval tonight. I think Dr. Thompson and I talked a little bit, maybe your next meeting to have it on the agenda and approve it. And certainly, this is not set in stone. If we need to come back to the table, some issue comes up, we'll be meeting with the business manager, you know, I'm sure there'll be something that will come up, new legislation, and we can change it then. It really tightens up a lot of the language and makes it more firm, to be honest with you, and it was much needed in our joint public agreement. So. And our legal looked at it as well.
Amy Olson is your ZED rep. She's not here tonight, so I just thought maybe get something going. Invite Patrick to come in and see if anybody had any questions.
Sure.
Get a chance to review.
Yep.
The joint powers agreement. So, you know, my situation is that I like to bring people, the board stuff on a special meeting and give them 2 weeks to think about it.
Yep.
Before they vote on it at the next meeting. So that's kind of the process that we'll be doing here.
Sure.
Just like we did this tonight, so.
And certainly I can come back anytime. And read it verbatim if you want.
Amy sent it to us.
Okay.
Thank you though for the offer.
Mr. Gordon, how many of the districts have you presented this to so far?
3. So 2 said we don't need it, and they got it handled, and we had a lot of discussion.
Was there any concerns from the other districts that haven't had a chance to look at it?
There were not, no. I think we took quite a bit of time. We started this last fall, to be honest with you. So, really, I mean, it was a huge undertaking. I think we took most of our superintendent meetings just going through it. We had 3-hour meetings, and it was great discussion. So,
yeah, thank you for getting all the superintendents involved in this
Yeah.
process
yeah,
and working through that agreement.
yeah. I mean, you're talking about stuff 20, 30 years down the road, and so those are those kind of discussions, where we're going to be at, and how I work with the districts.
Anything else for Patrick? All right. How'd the start of the school year, by the way?
Great, great. I did not find this room. I had to ask the custodian.
I hate emails.
I know, I saw that one.
Sometimes people need the room more than we need. it
Yeah.
out there, so.
No, it's going great, and we really appreciate you guys. You guys know, you guys have been a huge benefit to Zed. I mean, where we're at, our location, parking lots, we can park cars, all that kind of stuff, and just the collaboration's been awesome, so.
Patrick gave me a tour at the last superintendent's meeting. It was very impressive. I really liked it. He did a very good job working this out.
Oh, it's great. We love being in Kasson. Yeah. And the city of Kasson is just wonderful. I mean, the amount of volunteers and everything. So, we're excited.
Thank you.
Perfect.
All right.
Very good.
Thanks for coming.
Thank you very much.
Have a good night, Patrick.
too.
Okay, then we'll jump to 4.2 and have Mr. Larson join us for the 7th and 8th grade technology pilot program. Thank you for stopping in on.
Oh, absolutely.
Monday night.
So believe it or not, I'm a little bit old school and not into the technology like students are. So I printed off the handbooks, so they've been provided to you electronically. I'm gonna share for this way and for this way. So before we kind of start, I'm gonna just share some context with you. Our students at the 5th grade level have always had access to Chromebooks. Our philosophy or our system has always been cart-based, and so students have had access 5-8 to, I'm trying to think, 22 different carts of Chromebooks. This past year, we added social studies to our 5th and 6th grade curriculum. And as a result, it lessened the need of resource allocation in the 5th and 6th grade level and allowed us to reallocate more devices at the 7-8 level. Teachers approached me with interest in saying, Mr. Larson, what is the opportunity we could just provide a device to a student throughout the day? And through this reallocation of devices, our 5-6 students still have access to those. They still use them on a regular basis, but it allowed us to basically provide a device for each student in the middle school level in the 7th and 8th grade wings. And so with that, we learned some things along the way. So even though a device like this wouldn't go home with students, they would have it, it would be considered a one-to-one program. So these devices wouldn't go home, it would be assigned to them. And really the rationale behind it, the why behind it is each hour, if I'm in English, if I go to math, if I go to science, each teacher is saying, hey, all right, you 9 students, go to the cart, grab your Chromebook, go back, sit down, log in, that takes time. Then the next 9, and then the next 9. All right, so that instructional time adds up each day. Well, the reasoning or the philosophy behind this is, well, if I have a device that's assigned to me, open up the lid, more often than not, I'm already logged in, it's gonna save that instructional time. Because really at the end of each lesson on a cart-based system, I log off my Chromebook, go back, plug it in, all right, U9 go, U9 go, U9 go. And so when I was approached by teachers about this opportunity, it opened up a lot of opportunities for us. And one was being really time and efficiency and just ensuring that we can use instructional time effectively. Students have access to this device, which they've always had. The only difference is really they're assigned a device each day. And so when we look at our why, I think the biggest piece, and I put this at the bottom, I underlined it, you can't replace the magic that happens in the classroom. And when I look at the magic that happens in the classroom, it's the face-to-face interaction, it's the relationship you have with the teacher. What technology provides us or device provides us is engagement, opportunity for learning, opportunity for assessment, feedback efficiency. And so there's a lot of uses there that allow us to maintain and really just add another tool to the tool belt as far as engaging students. And so what I don't want people to think, and I don't want students to think, is that we are solely just focused on the devices, we're going to increase our screen time and not engage in civic conversations with our peers, our teachers, and so forth. And so while we want to balance that instructional piece, we also understand how the 21st century is looking, right? A lot of our jobs that we're situated within rely on our devices. I don't know of too many jobs out there. Dr. Thompson and I were speaking this the other day. Even tractors have GPS systems. I mean, so there's technologies embedded in a lot of different things, and we want to make sure that our students have an immersive experience with the technology, but also prepare them for 21st century learning. And so not only do we want to focus and prepare our students, but we also need to understand that our students are going to enter a world of digital technology and information if they haven't already done so. Secondly, the use of devices is not only to better prepare students for their future, but we want to make sure that we're providing them access to the things that they will use in their future. And whether that's learning to use them safely, responsibly, respectfully, it's important for us to ensure that we're providing those experiences for our students while engaging in learning. And obviously my last bullet point, like I said, technology immersion does not diminish the vital role of quality standards-based instruction standards-based curriculum and highly effective instruction, but instead enhances the presentation of both. And so if we go to the next slide, I'll talk about our benefits and limitations. When I go back to my time as teaching, it was imperative. I was fortunate enough to have an actively engaged classroom. Students are raising their hands, students are having conversations, but there was always a group of students that maybe just didn't feel open enough to converse with a peer or share their response. The use of devices, the use of formative assessment on your devices allows all students to provide a response for teachers to assess. So now we can gather in a short amount of time whether or not all 30 of our students are on track for the learning goal. And so these opportunities increase that engagement, but also increase that participation, whether it's web-based or conversational, we're able to access that. Equitable learning environment. We also have to understand that students don't have access to technology at home. And so if we can provide that technology throughout the day, it provides opportunities for our students to complete their work on a device that they have at school when they don't have a device at home. Increased differentiation. Each time we focus on where our kids are at, and we want to do our best to meet them where they're at, and that differentiation piece allows us to hone in on their skills with the instruction that we have provided within that technology. Obviously, again, improves valuable life skills, allows us to provide that feedback instantaneously with the use of technology in a more efficient and effective manner. And quite frankly, most of our curriculum, math, ELA, and science is web-based. And so those devices would be critical in ensuring that we're properly using TCI, which is science, my perspectives, which is ELA, and Envision, which is math. And so a lot of these curricular components that we are using at the middle school also have a web-based program, which will allow students access to that. Now, obviously, I understand limitations. We talk about increased screen time. I think anytime you talk about, hey, if a student has access to this each day, it's going to increase their overall screen time. Fortunately, Dr. Thompson and I had worked together. I was a teacher in Stewartville 2 years before Dr. Thompson retired, and we had one-to-one, and it really changed the game for me as far as an educator. I was able to use it as needed. Certainly didn't rely on it, but like I said, another tool that you can add to your toolkit. And then quite simply, if you're giving instruction and we're having face-to-face interaction, the expectation I have for students, we're screen down, right? Students can learn that. We're managing that. We're teaching them the 4 Bs. And so with that, we're providing that instruction for students to comply with their expectations, but also meet the learning expectations of the classroom. Budget concerns. Allocation of 580 devices at the middle school level. We're now allowing students to have them in hand. What are the concerns if a device breaks? What happens if the device, drops off the table? And so that's obviously going to cost money. Who pays for that? How? We'll get into the handbook and address that. But similar to what we've already done in the past, is students take them from the cart, walk over to their desk. And so really the only difference is just that transition time, is that they would be going from class to class with their device instead of storing it in a cart. And middle schoolers, as much as I love them, make mistakes. We trip, we fall. They think they have all their stuff in their binder, and then they turn around and the computer goes flying. And so there are accidentals that happen. But again, we model and teach our expectations and ensure that we've got a system in place to ensure proper usage of our devices. Device management and technology misuse, similar to what we do with students now. If students are not using their devices properly, I work with Chris Cunningham in the technology office, and we limit their device. And so if a student is looking up something inappropriately, we just shut them down, and they can earn it back after 2 weeks, 3 weeks, 4 weeks, depending on what the situation is. Show me that you can be responsible, and then after that time, you can earn your device. So it's really nothing different than what we've done. But I know that that's a question when students have access to this more often than not. And then just the general wear and tear. Devices going from place to place, that's going to cause just regular wear and tear, but obviously at a more extensive level at the district level because students are traveling with them from class to class. And so with that, We want to make sure that we've got a system in place, and understanding how this looks. So when we talk about pilot program, it's really a couple things. We want to assess after the first week, after the second week, after 30 days, after 60 days. How are our students doing? What are we seeing? Are we seeing broken screens? Are we seeing keys picked off? What are the things that we're seeing and how do we monitor that? From the behavioral level, it's a lot easier for me when a student's assigned a device because I know exactly who has that device. Whereas now, a device within a cart could be shared between 9 to 10 different kids. And so if there is somebody that's not doing something appropriately, I'm now, meeting with 9 different kids to figure out who did this. And instead of just, it's assigned to one person, it makes my job a little more effective when I can just connect with that one student. So obviously there's a lot of things that we will navigate throughout this, but assessing where we're at after the first week, second week, and 30 days is critical to ensuring that this is moving forward in a positive direction. Teachers are excited about this opportunity to embed this. I think more from the efficiency piece, we're not wasting instructional time every day for kids to come up and get their devices. They have them. They check them in at the end of the day with their 8th grade class. They get them, they have it, and then they would put these back at the end of the day. And so, any questions with this piece so far?
Just one quick question. Do they get the same device back the next day, or?
Yes. So like right now, currently, they can get any number of devices that they want. Typically, they're assigned. So if you're in a cart in English, you have number 13. But in math, you have number 14. In social studies, you have number 15. And so that changes from class to class. But with this piece, you would be assigned one device that is assigned to you throughout the entirety of the school day and school year.
Thank you.
So, yep.
Will it also be following them from 7th to 8th grade also? Will they keep the same one?
So right now, we would just share that 7-8. I know that we've discussed on what this could possibly look like 9-12. We do have a plan in place, but the purpose of this pilot is just to engage with students. How are they using these devices? Are they seeing academic gains? Because that's really the purpose, is are we seeing the academic piece? Are we seeing that efficiency is paying off in the classroom to ensure that our students are getting what they need? And so while we do have a plan in place for maybe 9-12, right now our focus is really on my end is really how the first 30 days, what the first 30 days looks like, and then reassessing after that. Anything else? Okay, and then we can just go. And with everything that we do, I assess it across the 40s. All right, how do we ensure that our students are safe? And in the digital world, whether it's on your cell phone or device, digital citizenship is important for us. And we want to ensure that students are being safe online. And whether that's responding appropriately, respectfully to a classmate, whether that's, we had exploitation in the middle school last week presented by Homestead County. Unfortunately, we live in a world where I can act as somebody else. I can act as, a 14-year-old girl if I choose to, understanding that they send things across platforms. And so we want to ensure that above anything, our students are safe and know how to respond to those situations. Respectful, responsible. Respect is a major component as we work with students. We want to ensure that they're respectful not only to one another, but respectful online. And then the responsibility piece. We model that, encourage that throughout the day. Right now at the 7th and 8th grade level, we use planner systems, and so our students take out the planners and write down in them. We also understand that we have to meet students where they're at, and my life is on that Google Calendar. And so while I like printed out handbooks, my digital calendar is on my computer, and I can access that and be responsible and make sure I'm in the right places at the right time. And above anything is being engaged. We want our students to enjoy their time at the middle school. We want to find different ways, unique ways to teach math, teach science, keep students engaged in learning and moving them forward to better themselves and ultimately better our community. And so the next slide is just the handbook. This is a draft. So please know that this is not anything that is set in stone. Obviously, we're modeling this throughout. You can see our message, our why, how we're gonna teach students to take care of their Chromebooks, how to handle them. And this is really taught at the classroom level. Our policies as far as district acceptable use, device acceptable use agreement. Again, these are all within our policies. And what happens when, a student, throws a Chromebook? Well, we work with that student and they replace it. I work with parents and, hey, your son or daughter made a poor choice. They decided to throw their Chromebook. It's $300 to replace. Or if a student slams their hand on the device, yep, that broke the screen, that's $50 to $70. Thankfully, we don't have a lot of thrown devices or cracked screens. Most of it's accidental. It's very, very rarely do we have purposeful breakage of a device, but we want to ensure that we're communicating with parents as this device or as a device would fall onto their responsibility if their student were to break something intentionally or even accidentally if they drop their device and so forth. So similar to what we've done in the past, again, we haven't had very few accidentals as students typically leave their devices in their Chromebook cart. So there is a possibility of that obviously increasing as students go from class to class. But that's where it's important for us to model and teach our expectations really to students to ensure that they can travel safely from class to class without dropping or breaking a device.
Hey Josh, is this what it has been? These same fees?
Yep.
Just
Yes.
for borrowing them too?
Yeah, so
Okay.
even though, currently, if a student in our current system, if they break a Chromebook, if they, smack down on a device, those are the fees that we currently charge right now.
Okay.
And most accidentals, depending on the situation, we work with the parent on and just saying, hey, yep, it's an accident. But we've taught students, hey, you shouldn't have a water bottle next to your device, you hit it, spills on it. So we work with parents there, but yeah, these are nothing new that this is not new information as far as cost. Sorry. And then we've got frequently asked questions in there. I know that parents are gonna have questions, comments, and things like that. So we wanna ensure that our students understand the expectations, understand how these will be used. Really on the student end, there's the only thing that really changes is that they're just provided a device each day. All right, instead of going up and grabbing a separate device, they really have a device that's assigned to them each day. So that's really the major change, and then transitioning from place to place with a device. So next steps would be is if this is something that the school board is interested in, really our next steps would be communicating with parents, sharing something similar to our handbook. I would obviously put together a presentation, a short video explaining why we believe this is important for our students, share that out to parents. Obviously, it's important for us to get their support, so it would accompany a short survey. Is this something that you would be interested in? Is this something you would support as a parent or a guardian? And really get that feedback, and then really look at next steps as far as implementation.
Josh, associated costs, incremental costs for this program?
It's hard to determine right now as far as we have the devices, so there's not a cost there. Really, the cost is going to be if there's any breakage. Our Wi-Fi is up to date. As far as like the software, the hardware is all in place. It would just be if there's the accidentals, the breakage. And so really kind of what Mrs. Hess and I spoke about was, I would expect to probably replace 10 to 20 Chromebooks a year. That just whether they have students hard on them, whether it's, just the general wear and tear. But then I would also work with those students and saying, hey, you're not showing responsibility. We also have students in a regular classroom that if they're doing something inappropriately, their Chromebook is taken away and they're able to access their education, but it's just going to be different from their peers. And so that's something that we already do, but also understanding that with a new pilot program, there's an opportunity for costs to rise, and I want to make sure that we're I'm doing my due diligence to ensure that we just don't have students just breaking computers just to break computers, so.
I'm sure we already have it in the budget for replacement, it must have a cycle that we have, Bob, to,
To a point, we do.
I'm not talking this, I'm talking just in general.
Right. We don't, we extend the life as long as we can. So like, I know there are probably some districts that after every 3 or 4 years, they have a refresh cycle. We don't do that here. So.
Yeah, we've done an exceptional job as a district and stuff, being able to kind of maximize the life of any electronic device in the district and stuff. I would anticipate that, there'll be, does it shorten the overall lifespan that we've been able to get out of some of our devices? I don't know. Do we have to look at kind of replacing the whole, the whole curriculum and stuff? A little bit, does it cut off the whole lifespan, a year or 2 or 3 or whatever, and overall?
Absolutely, and that's something that we're gonna monitor. Mrs. Hess and I had a conversation, and, the benefit is Google has pushed out the sunset date to 10 years instead of, I think it was at 6. So that's a benefit to us. But I think my biggest concern is just the general wear and tear. How we say that these last 5 years before they have to be sunset, and what that means is Google no longer supports the system, so we have to buy new. Now with that being pushed out to 10 years, that is a benefit because we don't have to buy as many at once. But obviously the understanding is we want to maintain these devices so that they do meet the 6 years, the 7 years, the 8 years. And that is always a priority for, anytime that we work with students. And, currently right now, things have run really well. But I have to weigh the cost of, the cost of the device, but also the educational gains of what can it look like if we're not spending 5 to 10 minutes each day grabbing a device, putting it back, plugging it in, logging in. What academic gains can we see there? So I definitely understand the balance there, but I think our first priority would be that 30 days and seeing, okay, where are we at with devices? What's our cost at? Are we seeing broken devices? Are we replacing a lot of screens? I think that's the nice thing about a pilot is we can assess and kind of go, and maybe the first 30 days is great. Maybe we have to reassess and modify and adapt and change, so.
I wonder too, if knowing that they'll get the same computer prevents some like fiddling with a key continuously or something, knowing that if it breaks, that's the same computer you use the next time, might have some accountability.
That's the nice thing, I think, is this device is assigned to me, so if I break it, Mr. Larson's gonna know, and that's a conversation I probably don't wanna have.
Right.
So that, I think that's the added benefit there. And I think anytime that something is yours, it's just better taken care of. And so it could go a lot of different ways, obviously, but, we have responsible, respectful students, and I have no doubt that they treat their devices just as kindly as they do anything else. So.
And I'm guessing when we have to replace them, when it breaks or whatever, we're getting the newer model that doesn't that the sunset extends?
Yes, yeah. So, obviously we've got extra screens on hand, we've got extra keyboards. The biggest thing is the keyboards and the screens. Those are typically our most expensive, those are the things that we deal with the most. And so while we do have some, we also understand that when you don't have enough screens to replace from the old devices into these devices, we would have to start looking at obviously providing newer devices for our students.
Any other questions from George?
The possibility as we're looking at for implementation would be after we do a parent survey as well as after parent-teacher conferences. And I'll take the hit on that one. I kind of put the brakes on that one because I want to make sure that we had a good foundation with our parents. So it would have, if the board was okay with it, the teachers are okay with it, the students and the parents, we need that 400 stool to be safe and have a good foundation for this. So Besides, that would give us a little time before the winter break, 20 to 30 days, and then have a little break and to reassess some different kind of things, see how things are going, see how the teachers like it, see how the kids are liking it, and then assess our damage control situation.
So Dr. Thompson, will you be looking for some approval from the board, or is that necessary going forward? Are you gonna make that decision or bring us a recommendation or something?
Well, we'd like to have, at least give you the nod, yes, that we would like to have you support in this situation, yes. We'll probably put that on for the next board meeting as well. But again, we wanted to bring it to you 2 weeks ahead of time, let you think about it, let you ask some questions, and then kind of go with it. By that time, you know, Josh will probably be starting to look at the parent survey and getting that on some of those kind of things.
I have one more question.
Yeah.
You mentioned the pilot and then possibly moving this into later grades. What about fifth and sixth? Do they do one computer, or how does their computer usage, would that, if this went well?
So right now they operate like we do now. We've got cart-based systems in there. You know, obviously math has you know a higher need for technology, social studies to an extent, but less in the extent of English and really science. And so they have access to those devices. I think at my 3,000 foot view and looking at what this would look like, obviously more 7-8, just a little bit more responsible, less congestion, just concerns with students moving with devices. And so while I think obviously as we prepare students for their next steps, I think logically 9-12, but also understand that there is a possibility, a strong possibility moving down 6-5 as well. So I guess my focus is let's make sure that 7-8 is going well, and then if we see progress there, it's a conversation with Dr. Thompson and the board about what that looks like 9-12 and possibly even 5-6. So.
Thank you.
Josh, do we have a current timeline and stuff with IT department as far as like phasing in and replacing the current devices that we have?
Yes.
And then in comparison, like how we anticipate that's going to change?
Lindsay has done a lot of work with just the devices. Obviously, we received a lot of new devices during COVID.
Yeah,
and so obviously we had COVID, we had during COVID, and then there were some that were sunset. And so obviously, I know that she's got a plan that probably exceeds the next, 6 years, 7 years, but also understanding how being adaptable, because this may increase that need, maybe lowers that need, but understanding that would be a financial piece for the district is if there is a increase in replacing devices that could have lasted a year longer or 2 years longer. So, but that is something that we've looked at and difficult to forecast at this point, but I think just the assessment of the overall program itself would be telling on what that looks like in the future. So.
Very good.
I guess I have just a little bit different shift in the 4 Bs. I have the 5 Rs: respect, responsibility, relationships, readiness, and results. And as I look through this, I think it hits all those 5 Rs. So we talked about this too, that, we're just come from a little different background there and what we believe, but I think doing something like this fits those 5 Rs as well.
Mm-hmm. It's nice to hear that the other districts like Stewartville have been doing this also.
Yeah, so we've worked with Stewartville, Byron, Pine Island. Those are the main 3 that do it right now that are obviously close with us. Obviously, I partnered with Stewartville when I was a principal there and a teacher. I think the opportunities are there to grow our students and really provide them the access, but also the skills for 21st century learning and teach some character development along the way. So.
Anything else? Mr. Larson, otherwise we'll let him go.
Thank you for this.
Yeah,
This is very well organized.
if you guys have any questions, feel free to send me an email. I'm more than willing to talk with us. So thank you.
Sounds good.
Thanks, Jack.
Thank you.
Okay. With that, we're on to 4.4, Dr. Johnson's gonna talk a little bit about the power of a positive food, chapters 2 and 3. If everybody had a chance to go through those. And we have some board members who aren't here today, but we're gonna still make progress.
Well, just a little bit, you know, we want to review a little bit from chapter 1. Some of the takeaways that you talked about last time were, you know, serving others, investment of time and energy that we have, and also striving to always get better. We talked right away in chapter 1, the positive energy you share with your team is significant and how important it is. So chapter 2, looking at the power of positive, and this has talked a lot about culture. And we've talked about that before with the board, as far as the culture that we're going to be looking forward to district-wide align some working with culture. So as we look from the board to the admin team, to the PLC leaders and down through our buildings, culture is very important. And on page 15 there, it says, you know, culture is a living and breathing essence of what a team believes, values, and does. And so, you know, that's what we do. And also one thing is, you know, culture is just one thing, it's everything. Kind of reminds me of the Vince Lombardi, you know, comment there that, you know, winning is the only thing, you know. But I mean, culture is so very, very important in any kind of organization we have, whether it's a school, whether it's your work environment or whatever it is, culture is extremely important. And also because of that, culture drives the expectations and beliefs. And in the chapter, it talked about Apple and how Apple believes that culture beats strategy. When they talked about the people that they have, I thought it was kind of interesting that they talked about that in there. It wasn't their high flyers that created the culture, it was the other people. So that, I think that was important. And then they, on page 15 also said, your most important job as a team is to create a culture. So we're looking to create even more culture, better culture as far as in our classrooms, and as far as our buildings, and all the way, again, aligning culture throughout the district. Page 17, we talked about culture is dynamic, not static. So it's not moving. I mean, we have to do something to create culture and improve culture. And also on page 18, talked about make culture a priority. And so I think that is important. On page 21, it talked about you have to have a heart, a feeling in that, and then also that we have to be intentional about culture. Culture just doesn't happen. It doesn't grow and get better by itself. We have to be intentional about what we're doing with culture. And so basically that was kind of a lot, but the other thing is that I got from this as well is that culture is thinking and behavioral. You can't just have culture by the things you do, you have to think about it as well. You can't just think about culture and not do anything. Those two have to be merged together if we're going to increase and make culture better in our district. And so that's kind of that, but I'm open to what you guys have to say about chapter 2.
I have a lot of the same ones starred. I also starred to be more process focused. It's more important than the outcome focused. And it reminded me of that session we had where you can make a goal and you have to ask how so many times. So like we could say a million times that we want to have a good culture, but how are we going to have a good culture? Kind of fell in line with that idea that we should be focused on the process and not necessarily always the outcome.
And I added just a couple of things on top of that is on page 21 towards the bottom. Please know that you don't have to be an extrovert to be positively contagious. Sharing positive energy doesn't mean you have to be the rah-rah person and bounce off the walls. And I think you forget that it's all of us, right? And you don't. We see the people who are more vocal about it, but it's everybody. And then at the very last line there on page 20, it means that you infuse your team with positive energy instead of being an energy vampire that sucks the life out of them. It's very important. It's actually, you know, doubly good to be positive, right? Because if you go the other way, you're strong from it, so. Those are the additional
Energy
things.
is contagious. You know, energy is contagious, whether it's positive or negative energy. You kind of infect all the other ones around you, positively or negatively. You know, and it's interesting, you know, we read through this chapter and stuff on culture and how dynamic it really is, you know, like it's not just something like, yeah, we've got a great culture, or no, we don't have a great culture, but it's always changing, depending on, it could be anything within a team, small team, big team, the whole organization, where, you know, something new is brought up, or, you know, something new is introduced in a meeting, and obviously change, you know, kind of breeds, you know, either positive or negative reactions. And so you're constantly always in this ebb and flow of trying to maintain that positive culture.
Yeah, I like the part about like individually owning it, right? Where it said, if you're part of a negative culture, don't see yourself as a victim and byproduct of it. Instead, get together with your team and create a positive culture to replace it. So just like say, owning it, right?
I've got two. On close to that page too, it talked about investing in the roots, which again was process focused, not outcome.
And the leaders may set the tone, you know, and it helps set a little bit of direction. But at the end of the day, everyone is responsible for the culture. And, you know, it's brought to life by everyone and created by everyone on the team.
Anything else there in chapter 2? Okay, we'll go to chapter 3 here a little bit. Positive teams work together towards shared vision with a greater purpose. And underneath that page, when you know your why, you know your way, you will not obstacles get in the way. So that's what they're kind of looking at here. You know, we talked about, this chapter talks a lot about having on page 27, having a shared vision where your team is going a greater purpose of why you're going there. And you have heard Josh talk several times about the why. We're looking at the why we're doing things and those kind of things, and then getting to the how as well, because that's important. Also on that, you know, you probably have read some books by Simon Sinek. He talks a lot about the why. You know, we have to know our why to be going forward. You know, we've kind of looked at that with our mission, but team success starts with having a shared vision of where your team is going and a greater purpose of why. Page 28 talked about the shared vision as the North Star and how related kind of the North Star, how big, you know, in ancient times, quote unquote, they looked at the North Star because they knew that was a constant. That was something that they were going to look for. They knew it was going to be there all the time. And so that's what we're going to try to look for too, is good culture in there. Also, you know, purpose on page 29 talked about purpose and having driven goals and how important that is as well. And on page 36, envision the future together. And that's important as we do that, because again, whether it's during a superintendent search or other different kind of things, that the board and the administrators and the school district and the community all has to envision the future together. And then talked about, they kind of did a challenge on page 38. They talked about one word. What one word will inspire you to live with meaning and manner and purpose? So that's what they kind of asked you to think about yourself. One word can you think of that will inspire you to move forward and think in a team way? And as they also talked about vision and mission. Talked about also about, you know, being a family, how we have to look at being a family and making sure it goes back and to the energy bus, making sure everybody's on the bus, making sure that everybody's thinking about the positive energy, the positive things that we have to look at and kind of go with that. So what comments do you guys have?
No, I really, I think about the microscope and the telescope analogy, and, you know, sometimes it's, in my own personal life, it's easy to kind of lose track of the big goal. But what else I thought about is sometimes I actually need not only a microscope, but even maybe like a bigger microscope sometimes, because looking at some of the smaller things, sometimes I get overwhelmed with those, that I actually need to zoom in on one specific part of that particular task. So I guess that's kind of what comes to my mind. And then as far as everybody being on the bus, sometimes it's so easy to like, let's just kick that passenger off, but it takes a little bit more work to get everybody on the same page, but that's kind of what I strive to do, I guess.
I like that analogy too, Mark. And the idea that we can move together powerfully in one direction. I don't think it necessarily means that we always agree with each other, and I think all of our perspectives make us stronger. But appreciating that together as a team is what I think makes us cohesive and allows us to move towards that vision or towards that mission.
Yeah, I think overall this is a really, really great chapter because, you know, really, when you're looking at a team, you know, great teams always have that one thing that they're shooting for, right? They're coming together for that one purpose, one goal. And obviously the team having a greater, you know, having that one vision for the thing, but also knowing it is all for a greater purpose, you know, greater over in any individual, but just, you know, a greater purpose beyond yourself. And one of the things I quoted is like, people with a purpose drive the numbers and achieve the goals, you know, as a team. One of the things, you know, you can have the greatest vision and mission statement in the whole world, but it's really pointless if you don't have people that are on the mission, you know, you don't have people that are on the bus. And so, you know, you can have, you know, so many people that are off the bus and still not getting where you need to go because the bus ain't moving, you know. So it's good to all be on the bus.
The one thing that I think is very good for this book is it talks about organizations. Doesn't, you know, not just talking about schools or school boards, it's talking about organizations in general. How, you know, you're all working, you're all probably on teams, right? And so how are we gonna work on teams, and how will this affect our teams as we look at our work teams, or whether we look at our board team, or we look at the teams we coach? Many of you are coaches as well. I mean, you're trying to make sure that you have that same kind of vision and purpose. And in the next couple chapters, Brandon will be talking a lot about the we instead of the me. And so it kind of goes by what you said. And the other thing I like about this book, it keeps kind of building on the last chapter. So the next chapter, 4 and 5, will build on 1, 2, and 3. So I think that's good too. So.
Yeah, just one, you know, to the shared vision and purpose. I got it right away in page 27 of the first paragraph. He said, when Alan Lenny became the CEO of Ford in 2016, he brought a wealth of experience from his role turning around an airplane manufacturer, Boeing. He brought the knowledge that in order to turn around the automaker, which had just lost $12 billion, he would have to unite the company around a shared vision and purpose. And he went on in the second paragraph there, he said, as I wrote in The Power of Positive Leadership, Alan created one Ford culture to unite everybody in the company and bring them together as one team with one purpose, working on one plan to achieve one goal. Alan told me that everyone had to know the plan, embrace the plan, and relentlessly work towards the plan. And it was one of the greatest turnarounds ever. And I was thinking, at least the first thing that came to my mind with the school district was the commitment to excellence. When we had failed a referendum for $9 million, and it was 70-30 against that referendum. And 20 months later, we went forward with a $40 million referendum explaining why it was necessary for the community, the district, everybody involved, students, the staff. Everybody came together during that commitment to excellence time. We went from that 70-30 on a 9 million to 65% voting for $40 million referendum. And then everybody came together and had a shared vision during that time. And it was I think one of the most successful things as a facility that the district's ever done. And one of those things that we get back to is that shared vision. So that's my thought.
All right, anybody have anything else?
There was just a couple other lines and stuff that kind of hit home a little bit, so obviously over the last number of years and stuff and through the pandemic and, you see so many people that just are burnt out. And I see it in healthcare, in education and everything else that, the passion is gone, but the line itself, and I've seen this before and stuff, we don't get burnt out because of what we do. We get burnt out because we forgot why we do it. It's that why that we forgot. And if we remember our why, we won't lose the energy and the passion along the way. And yeah, just seems like the last few years and stuff, especially I see it in healthcare as well, that there's so many people that lost their why.
I think that not just on the front line too, but for leaders. Because when people see the company or the leadership deviate from the vision, it's hard to buy in, even if you did have individual meaning with that vision. So watching that disconnect, I think, leads to a lot of burnout too.
Yeah, they were talking about page 28, they're talking about greater purpose and finding a greater purpose. And it struck me that people who go through very challenging times, and I'm thinking like cancer, or they lose somebody to cancer, or to some other terrible disease or something, maybe it's a drunk driving incident or something, and they come together for a greater purpose, right? They're looking, they invest the rest of their life in cancer research, or invest, they find that greater purpose in life. And they say, with all adversity comes a seed of equal or greater benefit. And the people who have that capacity inside them do find that out of that adversity, they find that seed of greater benefit, right? It's one of the things that I'm excited for this district to do, right? So,
Well, they have a great purpose, right? I mean, they are a very focused purpose. So that's kind of what he's talking about here.
I think it's interesting too, because all of the purposes, all of the words were meaningful as far as like a soft skill or a personable approach. Like it was, you wanted to better the life of somebody. It wasn't, you wanted to make a ton of money and, cut the bottom line. And so a lot of the visions, the deeper purpose that people buy into, I think, is more of that community focus of how do we take care of each other.
I think he said that specifically in here. Right?
Yeah, that would be about the numbers.
Yeah, it's not about the numbers.
Yeah, just even in his examples, all of his examples, their goals were very specifically wanting to better the life of somebody or build a team or.
And I think, got through most of everybody's one-on-one, and just about everybody's saying, the vision that we have is do what's best for kids. I think all of you said that and indicated that, and that's certainly a vision that we have, is doing what's best for kids. And how can we help them succeed and achieve? And I think that certainly is a purpose and a vision that we have as a board and the whole district. And so that's important as well. So, well, thank you for this. I know we only had 5 people here instead of normal 7. Next time we'll just do 1 chapter, okay? So we'll, on the regular board meetings, because we usually have more information, more things, we'll do 1 chapter, and the special meetings, not every special meeting, because that 1 special meeting, if you do hiring the right superintendent, that's a 2.5 hour to 3 hour situation. So, and I would like to get through with the book before the winter break. That's the goal here. I think we can. So.
Very good, thank you. Thank you, Dr. Thompson. Anything else for the board at this time?
I just the action item.
Okay. So we're on to action item 5.1, approve the post-insurance debt compliance procedure. That's why Mr. Haas has stuck around with us all today. Sorry to keep you here, Bob, but listening to us. First I'll just, anything on this, Bob, before we take a motion?
Well, it's more or less just kind of a reminder that once we issue bonds, like when we issued the $40 million worth of bonds 10 years ago, that commitment is still there, continues for the next 20 years, that there's some reporting requirements that we still have to do on a yearly basis for things, and then just making sure that we maintain the records up until the time that the bonds are all completely paid off. Because we were doing that potential refunding in a couple of weeks, which has been now postponed, Ellers is still suggesting that we go ahead and approve this, just because if at some point we do decide to do a refunding, then we've got this in our board minutes that we approve this, and then when the bond rating agency is going through that process, they see that, oh, you guys have already done this, you're aware that you've got these commitments out there after you get the money. So it's basically just kind of putting something in place for future reference. Unfortunately, I love that we work with Ellers because they have people on staff that help with all of making sure that we stay in compliance with all the reporting and stuff. So I don't know if you have any questions, but some of it is kind of dry.
Thank you, Mr. Haas. Okay, I'll make a motion that we approve the post-insurance debt compliance procedure as presented. Do we have a second?
I'll second.
Okay. Any other discussion on this? Hearing none, all those in favor of approval of post-insurance debt compliance procedure, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. The motion carries. Informational items, next regular school board meeting is October 23rd in the forum room, and the next special school board meeting is November 6th in the district office right here. Do we have a motion for adjournment?
I'll motion to adjourn.
Okay, Thank you, Patrick, anything else before we adjourn? Nothing, all in favor of adjournment, say aye.
Aye.
Meeting adjourned. Thanks everyone for coming.
Thank you, everybody.
This, do I need to sign a few things here?
Yeah, so I changed you as